Welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast, the resource for transitional and experienced genealogists who want to create a successful business. I'm your host, Marion Pierre-Louis. Here you'll learn from professionals all around the world who work in the field of genealogy. Are you ready to learn and grow together? Then let's get started. This podcast is sponsored in part by the Association of Professional Genealogists. You can find out more about them at www.apgen.org. Welcome to episode 15 of the Genealogy Professional Podcast. Today we turn toward the Mid-Atlantic to get to know Rebecca Whitman Koford in the state of Maryland. Rebecca, welcome to the Genealogy Professional Podcast.
Thank you, Marion.
Let's get started by having you tell us about yourself and give us an overview of your genealogy business.
I have been taking clients since about 2004, and I focus mainly in Maryland. I'm a researcher, educator, and lecturer, and I really love Maryland. This is my adopted state because we have lived here for about 18 years. I am originally a California native.
What was it that inspired you to become a genealogy professional?
Well, that's two different things. Inspired me to work on my genealogy is one thing, and to become a professional is another thing. I've always loved genealogy, and I really mean it when I say that I almost learned to read on my parents' old genealogy books. You know, those big handwritten books that were 11 by 14. I would go through those as a kid and look at the family group sheets and wonder about the people and who they were. My father is an orphan and was raised by his maternal grandmother, and I really wanted to know about those grandparents that I never met. Becoming a genealogy professional, I used to help people out, volunteer a lot when I was still really a baby genealogist, and a lady in my church offered, she really wanted me to work on her genealogy, and she offered to pay me, and I thought, oh, I can get paid for this? I had no idea. And that was an introduction. It was a very small amount that she paid me because she and I both knew that I was still learning, but it was a way for me to finance my education at that point.
Most people come to genealogy from another profession. Did you do something before you got into genealogy as a profession?
I wanted to do everything, honestly. My first love was art. And I worked in college at a bronze casting atelier, which is a fancy way of saying I didn't get paid to do artwork. It was more of an apprenticeship. I decided I didn't want to do that, and I ended up getting a degree in business management before I came to genealogy.
Did you work in the business field?
I did. I was kind of pushed into that by my boss. I worked for an insurance company. I was a secretary, but I was an office manager as well. And so I gained a lot of experience with sales, with organizing the records from that company. And I was pretty much in charge of the office, and I really enjoyed that kind of an environment. And the organization, I really enjoyed organizing and filing and all that. And I know it sounds funny to enjoy filing, but I like things where I can find them.
Oh, that's a wonderful trait. I wish I shared that trait. You know, though, that I like to be able to find things, too. But my technique is to just keep everything electronic because I can't deal with paper.
I agree. And I do have my paper, and I go through it occasionally, but I rely mostly on my Word documents and other things that I use to organize my family history now.
What did you do to prepare yourself to become a genealogy professional, both from an educational point of view and a business point of view?
As I really got started and realized that I could do this for a business, I saw so many holes in my own education. And that's the first thing I did is I looked around for those things that could build my education. The first thing I did was the NGS course. And at the time, it was the CD that you would buy. And at that time, it was 3 CDs instead of 1. I think they do it all together now, but I took each year of CDs and went through those courses, and it was an eye-opener for a beginning genealogist. I love that. And after that, I did what I could. I'm limited in being able to travel because of my family. And so if I couldn't go to a conference, I would get a book on it and I would read as much as possible to figure out what I needed to do. And beyond that, honestly, the best education is experience. If I had to choose between paying for a conference and going somewhere to do research, sometimes I would choose to go and do the research, to just get into the records and get to know them.
Now, you are a certified genealogist.
I am. Recently.
Okay, so tell us, I know that came after you became a professional, but tell us a little bit about that journey as well.
It was the best thing I ever did in terms of being able to satisfy myself that I was on the right track to get that peer recognition. And honestly, it was the best educational experience ever because I had to question myself. I had to push myself, and I had to look at what I had done to that point to see and compare it with the genealogical proof standard, with citation standards, and say to myself, okay, I see more holes in my education, and I'm ready to push myself through those. A lot of people say that they will or will not pursue certification. For me, it was necessary because I needed to know where I was still missing some of my education. And I will say even after that, and I've only just gotten it, even through that process, I see so many holes in my education right now. There's so much more I want to learn.
All right, so you're going to have to forgive me because I want to dig into this a little bit deeper.
Please.
I've just pulled my copy of the Bcg Standards Manual off of my shelf. For everyone listening, there is a brand new Bcg Standards Manual coming out. So go to the Bcg website or even to Amazon.com. I think it's listed there to find out about this book. What I want you to do, Rebecca, is for someone who is thinking about pursuing a CJ, is contemplating going in that direction, what is a way that they can get this book and approach it so that they can figure out how to interface with it, how to best use it, so they can start practicing now and make their work better so that it'll be applied closer to the standards that they're going to need to demonstrate when they submit their CG. Does that make sense?
Let me restate the question to make sure that I have understood
Yeah, because I totally, yeah.
You want me to tell you how I made sure that I was up to the standard and what I did to get to that point?
Well, yeah, do that. And also, if you have any suggestions for people at large, because somebody might buy this book. They might not yet be committed to going down the route of CG, but they're interested in following standards. Perhaps an example of how somebody can take one little report in this book, like the informal letter or something like that, and start incorporating. How can they approach this book so they're not so scared to use it, is really what I'm saying.
That's a good question. It is a scary thing because the genealogical proof standard is an end result. It is when you take your work and you compare it to the genealogical proof standard and say to yourself, have I met these standards? Have I done everything here? And I like the book because it explains those standards more clearly. To answer your question, how to take this and not make it so scary is just take it one little step at a time. Just like you would delve into a record series that you've never used before and just pull out some different records, try different things, ask yourself questions about the record and how to find it and how it was used and how it was created. You're going to kind of look at the BCG manual the same way. If you've never done a letter report, try one out. For your next client, use the examples, see what fits you better. Just looking through the book right now, just take it a little bit at a time and say, okay, well, let me try this part. Let me try this. Am I doing this or if I'm not, why and how can I get to this point? Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think so. People could make a little project of it, even just take one example in the book and say, okay, this month I'm just going to work on this type, that kind of thing, maybe.
Well, exactly. When I talk to beginners even about genealogy in general, the beauty of it is that genealogy looks like this enormous thing, but really we're just taking it one leaf at a time, not a one tree at a time. And so each of our projects really break down into little projects. We're not necessarily finding the ancestor of Jehoshaphat, Jones. We're saying to ourselves, what are the steps in between that may lead me to the ancestor of Jehoshaphat Jones? That's really what we're doing. We're breaking it down into baby steps, into smaller projects.
You had mentioned that you went to business school. I'm sure that when you started your business, even with having gone to business school, there were probably still some gaps. What did you lack from a business skill point of view, and how did you overcome that?
That is a very good observation. You're absolutely right. When I did the business school, they talked a lot about managing, a lot about relationships between employees and things like that. They talked very little about organizing your business, about setting it up, because they really did have to talk in generalizations. They can't talk to setting up a plumbing business, and that would have everything to do with setting up a genealogy business. It didn't work out. So they had to talk in generalizations. They didn't really give me a lot of tips on, okay, here's how to set up an LLC. Here's how to fill out your tax papers. Here are the forms that you need to use as templates for working with your clients. That, the little housekeeping things are still things you need to work out on your own. The general things I really got from it were understanding that business always changes and you need to change with it.
So you formed an LLC?
I have not yet. And the reason is because I look right now at my family's needs, and I have to say to myself, how much time do I want to spend, or can I spend, depending on my family and what they need in terms of time. I purposefully have kept my client load very low and not gone out and marketed. I know what I need to do to market, and I've not done those things on purpose because right now, at least for the next year or two, I need to keep my load low. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I don't think there's any right or wrong to the choices that people make.
But I am doing it this year, actually.
Yeah, I'm going to start asking this question in the interviews because I want the audience to become more... So right now you're operating as a sole proprietorship, I'm guessing.
Something more like that. I'm keeping it so low that I'm really reporting as a hobby income. But at the same time, I'm working a lot to fill in. Right now, I'm more interested in my education. Even though I've just recently gotten my CG, I can see where I want to expand, and I really can't expand my business without expanding my education again. So I want to concentrate on that.
I think particularly for women who have, like myself, who have a lot of responsibility for their family, that their genealogy business grows as their children grow. And expands as their children become more independent. And it's good to do that. It's good to say, I don't have the time to be, a full-fledged business. But it's also good to be aware of where you might want to be 10 years down the road. So it sounds like you've already got that covered. And I think it's just good for our listeners to know that they can start thinking about these things now, even if they're not ready to go down that path yet.
Well, you're right. A 5-year plan isn't just something that is bandied about. It really is important. You need to say to yourself, okay, well, what do I want this year that will take me to where I want to be in 5 years? I've got 3 teenagers, and I really thought 5 years ago that their independence now would mean that I would have a lot more freedom. And I'm finding that I don't have that much freedom yet. The teenagers take up a lot more time in different ways than they did as toddlers. I had my 5-year plan, but I've had to alter it according to my situation, and that is absolutely fine. We need to have a plan, but it needs to be flexible. But if we don't have a plan, then we're not going anywhere.
Oh, you sound so much like my husband, and you're right on the ball. My husband's an accountant, and he says you have to have a budget. He says the budget doesn't have to work out. That's why it's a budget, because it's a guide, and then you go back and you analyze, well, what was different from the budget. So that's exactly what you said, except from the financial point of view. And I can't stress that enough to everyone who's listening, what Rebecca just said. Have a plan. Have that plan. Even if you don't follow it, have the plan and then go back and say, well, why didn't I follow it? What do I need to adjust? But you have to go through the motion of actually creating the plan and creating goals.
And maybe this is a little off topic, but maybe not. When I decided to just knuckle down and put in the paperwork to start the clock for CG, that's when I knuckled down with a plan too. I've got a lot of friends, associates that had to extend their CG because of their situation. And I just had it in my little brain that I wasn't going to do that, no matter what. Now, of course, I needed to be flexible. If something happened in my life where I had to do that because something unexpected happened, then I had to do it. It was an option, but I really didn't want to. And so I literally took my calendar for the next year and told myself where I wanted to be in each month. And then as it got closer in the last couple of months, I just decided this is how much I have left. And I realized that I was further than I thought. And it doesn't mean that everything happened when I thought it did, but by the time I got towards the end, I was further along than I realized. And I ended up having 1 week where I just ended up plowing through a lot of final paperwork, a lot of the narrative, and it just started to tumble along really nicely. And I ended up finishing 2 months ahead of time.
Wow, I love the fact that you took a big goal and you broke it down into manageable tasks. I think that is the recipe for success.
Well, otherwise, it's this enormous cloud that's going to crush you. Mm-hmm. If you break it down into little things, it's just little stepping stones.
Can you share a story of an obstacle or a challenge that you encountered after you started offering your services professionally and how you worked around it? It could be anything. It could be a research problem. It could be a technical problem, or it could be a business problem, anything you like.
You know, my biggest problem was my own brain. I had an idea that I wanted to really focus in New York. And the reason I wanted to focus my expertise in New York is because that's where my family's from. But I don't live in New York. And I live 7 hours drive from New York. And I wanted it so bad. I really wanted to know New York. I focused a lot of my education in New York. And it just wasn't happening. I just couldn't understand enough. I couldn't access the records enough. And I knew that I wouldn't be able to serve my customers best if I was not on the spot. And when I turned around and said, you know what, why don't I just be where I am and enjoy the records here? Once I changed my attitude about what I really wanted, and I got down to the records here in Maryland and understanding those better and offering myself as a Maryland expert, Maryland professional, that's when it turned around for me. And I'll tell you, that's when I started understanding some of the New York records I was looking at better because I was on the spot. I'm not saying you can't do it. You can't work remotely. Of course you can. But for me, I wanted to be able to offer those records to my clients that were not accessible any other way except being on the spot.
What has been the most challenging aspect of being a genealogy professional from a business point of view?
From a business point of view, just making sure that I'm keeping up what I've promised to do. I work really well on a deadline, and so I make sure that I keep my deadlines. I write contracts with my clients. I make sure that I have a lot of communication with them because I find that clients will say one thing but really want something else. And so being able to delve deeper into what they want and restate what they're saying to find out if that's what they want has been a real challenge. I've really learned to communicate better with clients because I've early days, I would do what I thought the client wanted, and it didn't work out. It has worked out a lot better once I developed my letter of intent, my short contract, and once I made sure that I was putting deadlines on myself and not missing those if at all possible.
Many genealogists offer a wide array of services such as writing and speaking and client reports. How did you determine what services that you wanted to offer to grow your business? And since we've been talking about planning, have you planned to offer some of these services later, but perhaps not now?
I really am at a crossroads right now. I love researching. I love new problems, and I love really getting into it. And so I love reporting. I love writing reports, and it sounds funny because I used to hate writing reports. But the reason I love it now is because I love to be able to communicate the idea and see that the idea is communicated to the clients. But really, you have to do what you love, and I love speaking. Part of it is I'm an absolute ham, and I love to get up in front of people and talk. But more than that is I love to look out at the audience and watch the spark hit their eyes, where they say where you can tell in their own minds they're saying, I can do that. That will help. I want to try that. So I want to offer more speaking. My 5-year plan includes being able to speak nationally. I know that's not really going to fulfill me financially, but it will fulfill me personally. And I'd also like to expand myself into publishing some of these little-known records or indexes of these little-known records that I really love here in Maryland.
How do you balance paid work versus volunteering?
I volunteer, of course, at my local family history center. I help people out in my community who are interested in genealogy. But really, volunteering for me is just another level of education. If I can take myself out of the problems I'm used to and work with somebody else's problem, I know I'm going to learn something new. So I volunteer maybe, about 15, 20 hours a month. I really enjoy that time because, like I said, I'm learning something new every time I do.
Okay, so when you're volunteering, you're actually helping other people with their genealogy research.
Hands-on.
When you think about volunteering, that's probably the best, most valuable kind of volunteering that you can get because it does push you outside of what you're familiar with, and it really teaches you and enhances your overall genealogical education. I think that when we get into these positions where we're acting kind of more managerial or we're working for a large organization and we're chairing a specific thing, that's when a time issue really comes into play because it's like having a whole nother part-time job. And while it's enhancing some skills, it's not directly enhancing your genealogy research skills. So I'm glad that you're not in that vortex.
I do want to be. Just my personal skills and my background are such that those kind of positions are good for me. I'm good in in a large organizational thing, but like I said, for the next few years, I know that I can't put that kind of time down, even though I would really enjoy that. So it's in my plan, but not for about 2 or 3 more years, just because of my family's schedule right now. Really, you have to say to yourself, what can I take on and what will push me over the edge? You don't want to take yourself to the edge in terms of your time. You just shy of that because everything just comes and you'll get pushed to the edge anyway. So don't plan to go to the edge because you'll end up there anyway. If you plan to go to the edge, you're going to fall over it.
I want to stress that again for everyone who's listening. That's the most important thing, what Rebecca is saying right there. Do what is within your ability. Do not take on too much. Really understand your time constraints and accept educational opportunities, volunteer opportunities, every kind of opportunity that can fit within the limitations that you have so that you're not getting overstressed and overwhelmed, and because you're not going to be of service to anyone if you take on too much.
You're right. I enjoy this. The reason, and I tell my kids, I don't care what you do as long as you enjoy it so much that you're still going to do it when it frustrates the heck out of you. I really enjoy this, but if I'm going to end up stressed over all that housekeeping stuff, I'm going to be no good to my clients. I'm going to be no good to my family. And I really, really want to impress my clients.
Have you ever done any online volunteering, such as indexing for Family Search or Ancestry.com or, just a simple little online thing? And I just don't want to overlook that because that is volunteering as well. It takes your time. You don't have to interface with anybody else. And I'm just curious if you've ever done that.
Yeah, I index with Family Search. I think it's a wonderful thing for new genealogists to do because you're going to be introduced to record groups you've never seen before. You're going to start understanding that not every death record looks the same. Not every military record is created the same. And so you're going to just start absorbing more ideas of how records were created. Plus, you're going to improve your reading skills when it comes to early handwriting. I do indexing. I have volunteered to help organize groups like ProGen. And I don't mean organize, I mean coordinate. I was coordinator for 2 ProGen groups, and I really, really enjoyed that time working with the people, seeing what they were doing, and also going through the ProGen group. I was also a coordinator for the new book that Tom Jones has just put out, because there are groups doing that too. And that's online volunteering as well. As a coordinator, I had to really be more organized and force myself to put that into my timing and my planning.
Let me just ask you about those Tom Jones groups while I have you here and while you're mentioning it. So what Rebecca's talking about is there's a new book called Mastering Genealogical Proof by Thomas W. Jones. It's published by the National Genealogical Society. I'm holding it in my hands. I have not gotten involved with the study groups. Could you tell us what these study groups are? Are they open to receive more students? Are they ongoing?
I finished my group a couple months ago. Yes, they're ongoing as far as I know. I had friends who put me together with it, but I'm pretty sure you could Google it and find out what's going on with continuing the groups. It's free and they're doing it in different ways. You can either do it through Google or do it through an online chat like Basecamp that they use for ProGen. It really is good to go through it and go through it chapter by chapter with other people so that you can see other people's ideas and question things and find answers. I really enjoyed the book.
I believe this is the latest educational opportunity out there for genealogists. Do you think that's right?
Yeah. I think my group was group 14 or 16, and the book had been out for only a couple months.
Wow.
It was that popular.
Wow.
The groups were going so fast. It was an 8-week group. Some choose to do it every other week. We chose to do 8 straight weeks, and it was a great opportunity. Highly recommend it.
Now, I know Angela Packer McGee has a blog on genealogy educational opportunities, Adventures in Genealogy Education. The URL is genealogyeducation.blogspot.com. And since we're talking about education, I just want to point that out as a resource. And if you go to that blog, not only will she keep you up to date on deadlines and things like that for institutes and things, but you can explore all of the educational opportunities available in genealogy at that site. So that's a good one for everyone to check out.
Yeah, and check it out on a regular basis because things change, new opportunities come your way. Sometimes you can't get out to go all the way to Salt Lake or go all the way to Pittsburgh, but something comes closer to you, or the local APG may sponsor a small conference. Those are the things you want to look out for as well.
Rebecca, what is the most fun project that you've ever worked on that you can share with us?
I have a client, she's a repeat client. We work together on a lot of projects that she's interested in, and she teases me that her ancestor is my boyfriend because I adore him so much. His name is John Clements, and he was a cordwainer, shoemaker in Baltimore, and a War of 1812 veteran. And I just loved getting to know him and his area. He wasn't rich. He never bought land. But being able to research him was really researching Baltimore, researching the time period and what was going on in that really tumultuous time. I really like knowing a person. That really gets me. Really knowing, not just finding names and dates, but knowing a person. Mind you, someday when, if we meet in heaven, I'm going to give him a big hug and a kiss and then slap him around a bit because he's really annoyed me too.
That's funny. Let's take a quick break to hear a message from the Association of Professional Genealogists.
Hello. This is Kimberly Powell, President-elect of the Association of Professional Genealogists. APG is an international membership organization dedicated to supporting all individuals in the business of genealogy, whether you're an archivist, librarian, educator, writer, or researcher. Our 2,600 members include genealogists at all stages of their professional careers, from those just starting out to some of the field's most renowned leaders. Learn how to grow your business and network with other professionals through our educational webinars, informal mentoring groups, active discussion lists, the APG Quarterly, and our annual Professional Management Conference. Visit us online at apgen.org to learn how we can help you on your professional journey and how you can help us advance public awareness and understanding of the profession of genealogy.
All right, Rebecca, we are about to enter the lightning round, and I am going to bombard you with all sorts of questions, and you are going to come back with brilliant answers that are going to help all the genealogists out there listening to us today. Are you ready?
I don't know if I've got my brilliant answers on today. Let's see.
I think you've got them in there somewhere. All right, here we go. What was the one thing you were most afraid of in starting your business?
I was afraid of not being able to answer my clients' questions. And I wanted to answer, and it doesn't happen like that. You don't always get an answer. Now I'm most afraid of not satisfying myself that I've been effective. There's a difference between working with genealogy and being effective in the research that you do. And if my client gives me 10 hours, I want to make those effective hours, not just spinning my wheels on the internet or something like that. So I was afraid of just not being able to do what they wanted me to do and answer their question. Now I'm not afraid to not answer their question or say that I couldn't find it. I'm afraid to say I can't find it because I did not research effectively. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I hear you. What is the best advice you've ever received?
The best advice I ever received was, how do I put it? It's kind of related to the last question. I was in a pro-gen group, and part of the project was to create a research plan for your particular ancestor's question. And I sat there, and I think I may have come up with 47 different things that I thought I should do for this ancestor. And somebody came back at me and said, yes, but as soon as you do number one, it may change the rest of the 46 that you had planned to do. When you do a research plan the most effective things, not the easiest things to do. Do those and then reevaluate your plan.
That is really, really, really good advice, and I'm going to be thinking about that for the rest of the day. That was excellent. Thank you so much for that, Rebecca, for sharing that. What is one specific action listeners can take in the next 24 hours to help them transition into a genealogy career?
Find people who are in a genealogy career. Go and join your local APG group. The APG groups are wonderful. Even if you join a virtual group or a group that meets locally, it's full of people of every level of professionalism. People who are the top of the scale, and people who are starting out like you, who just want to be there to kind of absorb some of the things that they say and the things that they've done and their experience. That's really the number one thing to do.
Do you have a productivity tool or an app like Dropbox that you love that you can share with our audience?
I use Dropbox. I think my best productivity tools are the templates that I use to keep myself organized. Really, I keep everything on Word documents. I use a lot of charts to reevaluate my work and to compare one thing against another. But developing templates for everything is a wonderful, wonderful tool. And I know it's not technology, but it really kind of is because it's always evolving.
What is your preferred social media channel?
I am not really doing a lot of social media, and it goes back to the fact that I'm keeping my client list low. I really need to get into that once I decide that I want to do this more full time. If you get into that, you really are going to get a lot of clients. People are looking for their next genealogist in two ways. They're going to get a referral from somebody who's used a genealogist, or they're going to look online for it. Looking online is great because it's easy and fast, but you really don't know what you're getting. I get most of my clients right now from referrals, or honestly from repeat clients. I have to always watch those repeat clients because I can never tell them no, but I make sure that I'm not taking on extra clients because I know those repeat clients are going to be coming back, so I've got to always balance those. I make sure that I'm on my local APG lists and, of course, on the BCG, and that's where people have found me so far. Once I'm ready to take on more and even expand and take on employees, that's when I'm going to really delve into the social media.
If you can recommend one book for our listeners, what would it be?
I say that if you have never read Val Greenwood's Researcher's Guide to American Genealogy, then you need to cover to cover. It is outdated in terms of internet and things like that, but it's comprehensive. is wonderful when it comes to explaining and understanding not just what's out there, but why they were made. You really have to read that absolutely cover to cover like a novel. And he's fun too.
Hey, Rebecca, give our audience one parting piece of advice and then tell us how we can get in contact with you.
A parting piece of advice is enjoy the journey. It is rough. Genealogy is understanding history, understanding microhistory there's so much. Just enjoy a little bit of it. Just enjoy learning about one little piece at a time, one little area at a time, or one little record group at a time. And you'd be surprised how much that expands your understanding when you get to the next record group. How to get a hold of me? I am part of the National Capital Area chapter of APG, and so you can find me at dcapg.org, and of course on the BCG website. I also do a monthly blog for a company that I work with called Real Tributes, and that's REEL Tributes. If you go to realtributes.com and go to the blog, you'll see I give monthly advice or ideas for budding genealogists.
Well, Rebecca Whitman Koford, thank you so much for coming on the Genealogy Professional Podcast today.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Every episode of the Genealogy Professional Podcast is so different. Every genealogist that we speak to brings something completely different to the table. They have their own focus. They have their own requirements and their own goals for what they want to do with their business. And today was no different when we talked to Rebecca Whitman Koford. Some of the items that we touched on with Rebecca were becoming a certified genealogist and tips for how to organize your time so that you can get completed in a timely manner before the deadline. I think Rebecca had some really excellent tips in that regard. She also talked about setting goals and taking on the correct workload. And I can't stress that enough. When you're starting out as a genealogist, and even when you're an experienced genealogist, you really need to be diligent about how much work that you're taking on and make sure that you're not shortchanging anyone in your life, whether it's your client or your family. Also, she talked about how she decided on the right niche for her. And that wasn't the original niche that she wanted to do. And that's some really good information. You should put some thought behind that when choosing a niche if you haven't done that yet. She also talked about the importance of effectively communicating to clients and also doing effective research so that you're making the most of your time and going straight for the most important information. And we also talked a bit about acting as a volunteer to do research for other people as a means of actually improving your own research skills. So instead of doing online transcribing or things like this is actually on the front line in a family history center or something like that, helping other people with their research. And that's such a great idea for improving your skills and giving back to the community at the same time. Now, each week we always do an action item, and I hope that you're enjoying these. I hope at least that you're giving these some thought about what they involve, and if you're not actually doing the action item, you're considering how you can implement it at some point in your business or in your journey. Today's action item is going to be about the fun project. Every week I ask the guests about their most fun project. And what I would like you to do is let's just turn that around a bit, okay? You have projects that have been the most fun, the most enjoyable for you as well. So I want you to start off by making a list of those projects that you've really enjoyed. And the reason that we start with the projects that you've enjoyed the most is because there's some reason that you enjoyed it the most. Maybe the client was really fun to work with, or maybe the project was very successful, or maybe you did something really interesting that you haven't done before. Okay, so this is kind of a two-part action item. So make a list of those projects that you like the best that you've done. And they can be projects that you've done for yourself. So if you're not a professional yet, they can be projects that you've done either for yourself or for friends or family. Write these down. The next step is to ask permission of the client or the family member or friend to write up that information about the project. And you can do this in a way that you don't use their personal information, their name. There's many different ways that you can write up a project without disclosing personal information if people are concerned about that. So get permission from either a client or a family member or a friend for those projects that you worked on, and write it up in a manner that can be later used either for public speaking or for writing an article. But the important part that I really want you to focus on is just taking the step of asking for permission. Send an email, get something in writing. Say, I really enjoyed working on this project. I think that this would be good for teaching others how to do this specific challenge, and I would like to be able to use this in the future, either in writing or in a lecture or something. May I have your permission to do that? And then in a future action item, we'll talk more about how you can transform that project into something that you can use. But for this week, we'll just focus on identifying those projects and then going and asking for permission so that you can share what was learned in that project and share why you were so passionate and why you enjoyed it so much. That's part of the fun. Until next week, so long.